about my voice, but by God's grace, we have a guest speaker to preach today. Pastor Alex Kim is assistant minister at Sydney Yonglak Church, which is part of Presbyterian Church of Australia. So he is assistant minister there to serve English ministry of the Korean Church. He's a dear friend of mine. We studied together at Christ College. A longtime friend, and I respect him highly. And he is the preacher of the gospel, and I would really appreciate him coming down to Melbourne and bring the word to you as well. Let's welcome him.
There's a animal in the animal kingdom in the sea that is one of the simplest animals ever. It's called the sea sponge. And the sea sponge, it's just a little creature that sits there, and it's really made up of three different kinds of cells. Just kinds of cells. There's only three different kinds. One of them. Oh, there's a picture of it. Oh, beautiful. One of them is a cell that has little tails, and all the tails do is move. They just flutter. And what that does is it creates a current within the sponge that sucks water in and filters it out. But then there's another cell that is like the structure. It's like the bones of the sponge, and it holds it together. It gives it its shape. And then there's another cell that sits there, and all it does is it consumes anything that comes in through the water. It consumes it, and then it shares it. It digests it, and it shares it with the cells that are doing the other things. And so all three of these parts have to work together for the sponge to survive. Because if it was just one, if it was just a bunch of tail cells, these cells that just flutter, and it didn't have the structure, it would just kind of fall apart. It just could be a mesh on the floor. If it was just a structure, it would just be like almost a skeleton, just a rock in the water. If it was just the digestive cells, then there would be nothing to pull water in, pull the organisms in for it to feed. And so each part needs to work together. I really liked Jackie's sermon. I felt like, I was like, should I really preach? Because that's kind of basically it. We're all important. Each of us are the church. The church is in the same as this structure, this little plant, this simple plant. But God has placed each one of you here with purpose. In His infinite wisdom, in His love for the church, He has placed you here. And so today, as we look at this passage today, I want to look at excluding yourself, excluding others, and including completely. Okay, so let's start with excluding yourself. Look at verse 15 to 16. Verse 15 to 16 says, if the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. I think that's what a foot would sound like, right? And if the ear should say, because I am not an eye, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. Now, it's this interesting thing, body parts don't talk. But if they were to say these things, it wouldn't make sense. Because the body has to have, it doesn't have any say of what belongs to where. The body has been set. And so one of the things that you have to say about the church is, I am important. Can we all say that together? I am important. I am important. No, that's not how you say I am important. How do you say it? I am important. You are important. Each one of you is important. You are important. You are important because you bring a certain set of skills. You bring a certain personality that unless these things are working together, the church would be missing out. When I'm talking to each one of you, each individually, if you are not at church one Sunday, the church misses out. You miss out, of course, because you're not at church. But the church misses out. You are depriving the church of an important functional member of this church. Because when you come, you bring something to the party. You bring something to the church that nobody else can bring. And you might be like, I'm new. I'm not really that involved. I'm shy. No. There's something that God has done, given to you. I'm young. No. There was one time I was preaching at church, and as I was preaching, there was a baby in the back of the room, a vital member of this church, a newborn baby. And as I was preaching, suddenly this baby cried out in this joyous sound. He just like, or it sounded much cuter when he did it. And as he did it, I looked, and instantly, almost instantly, my heart was lifted up. And it wasn't part of the sermon. It wasn't part of the church service. But that child did something for me. He contributed to my worship that day. Each of you are a vital member, and it's not because I'm great. You know, a lot of times you look and you go, this is the Reverend Samson's church. You know, this is Helen's church. This is Jonathan's church. You can say, it's the praise team. They are who most important. The people working the pot. It's their church. No, it's our church. It's Christ's church. And we are vital members of it. And the most important reason is, verse 18 says, but as it is, God arranged the members in the body, each one of them, as he chose. You are here. You are here, and you are here on your own free will, hopefully. You know, maybe your parents made you come. But you're here, first and foremost, because God said, I want this person here. This person is a vital member of my body. This person is important to me. And he says that for each of you. And therefore, we have to think about what does it mean to exclude others. Verse 21 says, the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. We cannot exclude others in our church. I look around and I look at, this congregation is a multicultural congregation. I look around and it's a beautiful sight. I see not just multicultural, but multi-generational. There's in some ways, you guys, there are differences in the way you look, right? And we can focus on differences. We can focus on differences. You know, I like flat white. I like Americano. Or long black. Sorry, I'm American. I like, and you can look at each other and go, I'm better than you. No, I'm better than you. And we can look at differences. I like soccer. I like rugby. I like league. I like union. I like AFL. Aussie rules, right? Sydney, apparently, we're not allowed to like Aussie rules in Sydney. But you're allowed. You can focus on the differences. You can always find something different. But the important thing is to realize that there is something we have in common. Something so precious, something so great that no matter what, it trumps everything else. Everything else just seems petty. If everybody in this church was wearing, black shoes, and one person came in wearing white shoes, and you looked at them and said, yeah, you don't belong here. If you don't notice, we're all wearing black shoes. You would be like, no, why would you exclude somebody for something so petty? In the same way, when you think of church, don't think of what we have differences. Don't think of spiritual maturity differences. Don't think of, ability differences. I was thinking singing. That's why I did this motion. Don't think of, looks differences. Don't think of age differences. Don't think of nationality differences, background differences, cultural differences. Don't focus on those things because you have something much greater in common. What is that thing? It's Jesus Christ. It's Jesus Christ. Jesus died, gave his blood, his own precious blood, so that you can be his. If that's the case, we can look at one another and say, you're somebody that God loves. I love you too. I love my in-laws. I love my in-laws. My mother-in-law, she's an amazing cook, very, very lovely person. I love my father-in-law. I feel like he doesn't like me, right? But I love him. And do you know why I love him? I loved him as soon as I met him with my wife, my fiance at the time. I met them. Actually, no, she was my girlfriend, right? She was my girlfriend at the time. And I met him, and I loved him at that moment. Why? Why did I love him? Because the person I loved, my girlfriend at the time, right, my wife, she loved him. I could not look at this man and say, I don't love you if I really loved my wife. Same way, we cannot say, I don't love you when God, who is most precious to us, looks at that person with such love, with such tenderness, with such, and to say, this person is important to me. There was a man in India during the British colonial time. This man in India he was Hindu, and he looked at Christianity, and he read about Jesus. And as he read about Jesus, he's like, wow, this Jesus is an amazing person. And as he read, he picked up the Bible and he read, and he's like, oh, his teachings are amazing. I want to know more. Where would I go to find out more about Jesus? The church. And so he visited a church. Remember, this is back in the colonial times. This is in India. And as he went, he approached the doors, and as he came in, they barred him from coming in. Why? Because he wasn't British. And so they said, you don't belong here. That man was Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi. Probably the most, if you think an Indian person, probably the first person you're going to think is Gandhi. The most famous Indian, somebody that led his people, that led the Indians, and they have they're a national hero to them. He's a national hero to them. To think, what kind of testimony would it have been if he was Christian? He says, I love Jesus. It's Christians that I don't like. If those people in that church had welcomed him, had applied this passage, then India would look very different. The testimony of Christianity would have been much stronger. But we do this. We don't exclude others. We welcome others. Why? Because of verse 24. Look at verse 24. Which our more presentable parts do not require. But God has so composed the body, giving greater honor to the parts that lacked it. God has composed his body. Once again, if you cannot say this person doesn't belong in this church, because guess who brought this person to church? It was God. Guess who said this person belongs in it? This person is important to me? It's God. It's his church. And so we don't exclude others. In fact, it's not just to, I'm not going to exclude myself. I'm not going to exclude others. What's more important is that we include completely. Include completely. Look at verse 25. Verse 25 says, that there be no division in the body, but that the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together. If one member is honored, all rejoice together. I look at my body, and there's actually two parts of my body that I'm kind of like, you're kind of useless. You're kind of useless. And those two members are my pinky toes. My pinky toes, I cannot even move them by themselves. If I move them, the fingers next to them have to help it move. I'm like, wow. And sometimes I look at it, oh, and it's not a good-looking toe. Mine looks all ugly, right? But what's interesting about my pinky toe is every now and then, it's just happened a couple times, I'll be walking barefoot in my house, and I'll walk in my bedroom, and as I'm walking, I'll kick the bed frame. I'll kick it, and it's not kicking it like, it's accidentally kicking it by the side of my foot, and just one toe hits it. It's my pinky toe. And when it hits it, I look at my pinky toe, and I look at it, and I go, see, that's what you get for being so useless. Is that what I do? No, what do? I cry. I cry out in pain. It doesn't matter what I've been doing that time, what I was looking for in my bedroom, all I'm thinking is my pinky toe, pain. You poor thing. I tend to it. I don't care about what I look like to other people at that point. Why? Because that pinky toe is in agony. We live in a culture, our culture, the Western culture is very much, individual, me. As long as I'm okay. As long as, my private life is my private life. And it is. But may it not be so with the church. We come to church, and we come with baggage. We come with brokenness. I don't know about, maybe you don't. Maybe you're perfect. But I'm a sinner. I sin. I'm pretty sure I sinned this morning. I sin so much, sometimes I don't realize how much I've sinned. I have brokenness. There's times when I'm not always happy. When I come to church, people say, oh, you're always smiling. Part of that is, when I see that person makes me smile, right? But part of it is, at church, you have to be happy. At church, you have to pretend you're good. At church, you have to pretend everything's in order. And if that's the case, church can be one of the loneliest places. Because you see, everyone else is fine. But in your heart, you are suffering. And because of that, you don't want to stand out. But the funny thing is, if that's the case, there's probably other people feeling the same way. And the only way we can break through, the only way we can have a deeper relationship is if we be vulnerable and we share with one another. I had a group of friends, high school friends, that we were very close, and we all went our separate ways after high school. But every now and then we'd meet up, and every time we would meet up, it would be like old times. And there's one time we hung out at night, and we laughed, and it was like 4 o'clock in the morning by the time I started to drive home with my friend. And as we drove home, I said to this friend, hey, that was so fun. Time went so fast. It was so fun. And he was like, yes. And he got a little sober and a little somber. And he's like, you know what's interesting? You guys are my closest friends. Like there's 4 of us. Right? You guys are my 3 closest friends. I love hanging out with you. I love laughing. But I've never told you anything about what I've gone through. I've never talked to you about anything I've done that's difficult. And that broke my heart because he realized that this group of friends is only friends to laugh with. And that's really a shallow relationship. I hope that this church can be a place where we all come together and we're able to have deeper relationships, deeper conversations, to share our burdens, to walk alongside each other, to grow together. Why? Not just because, oh, I should do this, I should have a deeper relationship. That's not gonna motivate you enough. What's important? God loves this church. God, who sent his son to die for each person here, who sees this church and sees it as something that is precious to him, as someone that is precious to him. He sees this church and he says, I want you to be happy. I want you to care for one another. I want you to love one another. I want to use you to build each other up. And let us do this. We cannot exclude ourselves. We are too important. God placed us here. God arranged us here. God has given us the gifts that we have to utilize in this church. We cannot exclude others. God, once again, has placed us here. God chose you to be here. And we must suffer together. I just came down from a retreat, a little camp in young adult camp, and the theme there was countercultural. And what's interesting is if you look at John chapter 13 verse 32, it says, "By this all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." And to be countercultural, you have to be different. To be countercultural, this culture is heading in one direction, and we have to go against the flow. And notice Jesus doesn't say, if by this, all people, the people in Sunshine, when they look at this church, they'll know. Notice he doesn't say, by this, all people will know that you are my disciples, by how well you sing, by how well organized you are, by how nice your preaching is. How will they know? If you have love for one another. If you're going to make an impact in this society, if you're going to be countercultural, we must love one another, because this culture doesn't know what that looks like. But God has demonstrated that to us in his Son. I pray that this church will love one another and seek God together and grow closer in relationship through all of this. Let's pray.